Welcome back to the safe house. All right, I have to talk about politics a little bit. It's not really politics actually. I want to talk about the Trump assassination again. So, evidently, and I'm not saying there's any real validity to this. Time will tell. But evidently there has been a former Pennsylvania law enforcement whistleblower that is saying that the governor of Pennsylvania, I think it's Josh Shapiro, was involved in a plot to assassinate Trump. Okay, I have a previous video where we talked about this, but we're going to hit some different points here. Coincidentally, the rest of the, and evidently 2,400 pages of lost JFK files, pages in the JFK files, are going to be released and are in the process of being released. And I was watching just a portion. I didn't watch the entire podcast, but I watched a portion of the PBD podcast, and one of the co-hosts, I think he goes by Vinny, had made a comment that he was more interested in what happened with Epstein than the JFK assassination because it was so long ago. It was 60 years ago, and everybody involved is dead. Well, let me comment on that. Here's why it is still so important and valid. Because it is a piece to a bigger picture. It's a piece to the puzzle which makes up a bigger picture. And I think for a lot of people like myself, when I was a young man when I had an interest in this, and I started researching it was one of those moments where when you realize that the Oswald story is nonsense, at least that he was a lone gunman, and that there was a conspiracy involved. There was a conspiracy to assassinate the president. You realize, wait a minute, this changes things. This changes my reality. The reality I thought I was surrounded by doesn't exist. And then you start to look at it rationally, critically, and I've made this point before with other people in the past that I've had the conversation with, people that were so convinced that the narrative we were fed was just true. They watched like a 40-minute nighttime television special on it, and they listened to some paid propagandist disguised as a journalist paint that picture, and they're like, oh, well, I agree. I wished, particularly when I was like on the fence, I wanted to believe we lived in a world where we could tune into some special on television and just be fed the entire truth, and that we didn't have to go out on our own and seek out truth. I wanted to live in that world. I just, after enough research, realized that we do not. None of us do. So a couple of points I would make is, if Oswald was a lone gunman, he just put together this plan himself and executed it, there was not a conspiracy involved, why did Jacob Rubenstein or Jack Ruby sacrifice his own freedom? There's no way he thought he was getting away with that, to kill Oswald. He was just such a great patriot. He had such a infinity for Kennedy and what he stood for that he was willing to give up his own freedom and life and accept life in prison to just kill Oswald? That seems silly. Another, Oswald shot from behind and to the right. And anybody that's done any hunting or shooting, and you don't even have to, anybody that can do, understand basic physics, a bullet from behind him into the right would thrust his forward into the left. It's like inertia. It's that energy carrying through that whatever the bullet hits is going to move in the same direction as the bullet. So if Kennedy's head went back into the left, that bullet came from forward and to the right. I think that's pretty easy to understand. And another point, if the main narrative that we were told about Oswald being a lone gunman, why have they kept the files classified for all of these years? Well, it's coming out, and I forget the lady's name that addressed, the press in the press conference, talking about the releasing of the files and that she had viewed at least some of them, and it is her belief after viewing what she had of the JFK files that have been classified up to this point, that there was a second gunman. I think it's possible we might find out there was even more than two gunmen. But let's understand, let's look at the reasons for either. So, we've all heard of the saying, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead, right? So, the more people involved, the more people you have to worry about not keeping a secret. So that would make sense why 2 gunmen. And why not just 1? Well, it's very possible that Oswald was not supposed to survive. And he didn't. He died soon after. No trial. Dead men can't testify. Dead men don't talk. More than 2 people? So a second gunman would be required. The plan would be for the real marksman to get away, and the patsy, like Oswald called himself, I'm just a patsy, would take the fall, and he'd be the fall guy and not survive, like Thomas Crooks. Thomas Crooks, the alleged attempted assassin for Donald Trump, is dead. We can't get his side of the story. He can't be questioned. He can't hold trial. He can't testify. Or he can't be tried, can't testify. And I remember soon after it happened, as soon as I heard about it, and I heard the narrative that was being put out there very quickly, lone gunman. I said, there's more than one shooter here. And a friend of mine said, what would be the point of a second shooter? And I said, the fall guy, the guy that doesn't know how to shoot, doesn't matter if he knows how to shoot. All he has to be able to do is squeeze the trigger, is dead. And he can't testify, can't be questioned. End of case. Case closed. We got him. He's dead. We shot him. Yay, Secret Service. For such an accurate, deadly shot. So, again, back to why is the JFK, the truth about what happened to JFK so important? Well, it was the start of something. Did you notice that not only is Trump releasing the JFK files, but he's going to release the RFK files, the MLK files. because it's painting a picture. They're all related. I've said this in a previous video. There was a series of assassinations that were all very common or all very similar to each other in a relatively short amount of time, less than a decade. And this is the corrupt vein that runs through the United States government, the corrupt vein that JFK tried to warn us about. What does he say? Secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. Why do we have the right to free speech? Because a democratic society, a democratically elected constitutional republic, is dependent on free speech so that a society can be well informed rather than indoctrinated and victims of propaganda in order to vote correctly. In order to, that's not to say that plenty of lies aren't put out there, but it's not just lies. The society has to be well educated and well informed in order to vote correctly. And this vein of corruption that has run through our government for a long time now was jeopardizing democracy. Really, God, I wish I had it, I could post it here. Listen to the speech that JFK gave just a month or so before he was assassinated. JFK wanted to splinter break the CIA up into 1,000 splinters or whatever he said. JFK wanted to get rid of the Federal Reserve, outside financial institution which influenced and held power over the United States, the sovereignty of the United States. What is Trump talking about? Auditing the feds? Look at what Trump just did, dismantling, shutting down the U.S. aid program, of which has been a tool of the CIA for many, many years. It was not at all a resemblance of the U.S. aid that JFK, the U.S. aid program that JFK implemented by executive order back in 62 or 63. And this is, so again, I'm going to sound like I'm bashing the left. And I think that there are a lot of people on the right that just voted for Trump because they liked the things he said. But if you go back really to World War II, even before, but the more about history you understand, and not just the history that we were taught in public school system, because they're trying to create patriots to the system that exists, corrupt or not. They're painting a picture of history very intentionally, but you have to go back. Here's another example. It's like, okay, Oswald was a lone gunman, the narrative says. Well, used to say. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, I think, something like that, 5 years later, his brother, who was the Attorney General, appointed by his brother, JFK, and very likely going to be an even better president. RFK was, I'm not taking anything away from JFK, but RFK was an exceptionally smart, moralistic, man of morals, individual and leader. I mean, he was arguably going to be an even better president and able to reopen the case of his brother, was running, gaining popularity. I don't think that many people would argue with the idea that RFK was going to be the next president. And then all of a sudden, another lone gunman, nut job, assassinates him too. And then the youngest brother, Teddy Kennedy, was going to run for president, and he gets in a very mysterious car accident. I think he even survived an airplane crash. They called it the Kennedy curse. I mean, eventually, you have to connect the dots, step back and be like, I don't know if I can prove this, but this seems strange. What is it about these guys? Let's just consider it for a moment. This evil vein that runs through the government, this clandestine arm of our government, who have been really calling the shots, involved in mind control, assassinations around the world, overthrowing governments, manipulating elections, sabotaging economies, and corporations, involved in drug trafficking, because you have to have a source of money that can't be traced back to anybody to fund covert wars. Why would they want these particular people dead? Isn't it interesting that these people that keep getting shot by lone gunmen, deranged lone gunmen, these people are trying to stop the corruption. These people don't want an outside financial enterprise or entity like the Federal Reserve issuing the currency of our nation. They want to bring to light the truth about these assassinations. They want to end government corruption and corrupt channeling of federal taxpayers' money into the pockets of people that do nothing good for the United States. Why is it these people keep getting shot at and in most cases killed? Well, I think we're finding out. I heard, I'm not sure if this is true, but I heard that Trump is going to release the 9/11 files too. I think it's very possible, and this ain't over yet, okay? This is not over yet. But I think it's very possible that we're going to start being able to connect the dots. These dots that have been classified forever and ever since the beginning of what was really, you might call a coup d'etat. A coup d'etat that was not on the surface, a covert coup d'etat, done in such a way that the American people don't realize that there was a coup d'etat that took place. That likely started before Kennedy. The Kennedy assassination, the RFK assassination, the MLK assassination for different reasons, the attempted Reagan assassination, the attempted Trump assassination. We're going to be able to connect these dots, and it's going to paint a much bigger picture, and it's going to reveal a reality, a reality, a correct reality, And people will start to realize we don't live in the world we thought we did. In fact, these nut jobs, we live in the world that a lot of these nut jobs that we've been chastising for years knew we lived in. I'm not going to say told you so. I don't need to. A lot of these people that have been saying these things, they're just people that have been paying attention. I understand. I've talked about my past, and I've talked about a different job I had at one time in illegal activities years ago, well past the statute of limitations. But there was a reason why, when I was younger, it made sense for me to pedal around on my bicycle selling bags of weed and at home waiting, and texting and trying to build clientele. And it didn't always, but it allowed me time to study these things. And I realized that there are a lot of people out there that from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed just don't have time for this, and or just don't have the interest for this. And that is fine. I can't tell you how many times in my life I've actually envied these people. I've said it before. I'm not sure why, but I have for a long time felt like I had a responsibility to truth and understanding the world around me. Truly, the real reality. It's somewhat a strange thing that I have felt like this from a young age. And in order to do that, I don't believe every conspiracy theory out there. I don't think that everything is a conspiracy. But part of understanding the world around us is the willingness to consider these things. And when we come to the realization that something as major as the President of the United States being shot in the head due to a conspiracy involving, in my opinion, the CIA and the Mossad, we're like, holy shit, if this is true, just imagine these other things that might be different than what we were taught. They might have unfolded differently than what we were taught. Doesn't mean that they did, but it's possible. And if I wasn't willing to consider that the main narrative of the JFK assassination wasn't true, I would have never ended up with what we're finding out now is the truth. And again, so many of these people that naysayed the theory that there was a conspiracy to assassinate the president and that there was more than one shooter really didn't research it. They didn't have time. That's okay. That's okay that they didn't research it. There's nothing wrong with that. The fact that they didn't research it, or very, very little, and or that they just didn't have time and or the interest. But we've talked about this before. Why chastise? That's a whole different thing. We're not even going to get into that. It's unimportant. It's really, in the big picture, not important either. But there is a connection between the JFK assassination, the RFK, MLK, Malcolm X, 9/11, weapons of mass destruction, Gulf of Tonkin, to back up a little bit before 9/11, the false flag events. What did Eisenhower warn us about as he was leaving office? he very specifically and intentionally addressed the nation and used the words military industrial complex. And it's like that picture. There used to be a meme or something with all the, and we've all seen it. It's been like movies. The typical scene of the conspiracy theorist with all these notes and pictures and newspaper articles up on a wall with strings connecting each, connecting the dots to a conspiracy. Yeah, well, that's the reality we find ourselves in. That most of these things are connected. These major events are connected. And there again, I think that soon, it's like, it was said on the PBD podcast too, by one of the co-hosts, that history, that us conspiracy theorists that have been pointed at and scoffed at all these years, now that these files are being released and we're getting to see, we are being vindicated. That's not why I do this. I don't really need vindication from uninformed. I'm not going to say, some people really, I think, don't have the mental capacity to wrap their brains around this. Some don't have the desire. Some don't care or are indifferent to really, a theory. But I don't need vindication so much. But it is a little bit humorous. You do chuckle a little bit. Oswald's a lone gunman. So was Jack Ruby. So was Sirhan. So was Hinckley. It's like, God, I know that it is possible for somebody to just be a lone gunman, carry out their own agenda, and it is worth their life. But isn't it also possible that there could be powerful forces out there willing to conspire together to eliminate a major obstacle to their agenda? Can't we consider that might be at least one or two of these cases, Isn't it interesting that all of these gunmen are just deranged lunatics that actually penetrate the best personal security in the world? And so we will see, I think, the more that this comes out and the more that comes to light, we will see that mind control is nothing new. It actually dates back. Hassan bin Sabat? I'm not sure I have that name right. But this goes back hundreds of years. He was Iranian, or at least he was Persian. And I think that I'm going to touch on this on another video. I'm going to take a stab at it now. The word the word assassin, originally in Persian, I believe, was hashashin. And that word has roots in the word hash, because this person, Hassan bin Sabat, I think that is how you say his name, would take lost orphaned boys at a young age, use hash and opium, I believe, to alter their state of mind, indoctrinating them and essentially turning them into some of the first Manchurian candidates, like mind control subjects programmed to assassinate. That's an interesting one. I'm going to do some more research. This is something I researched 20 years ago. So I'm going to do some more research. But we will learn that, one, these are not new concepts. Putting somebody under hypnosis and manipulating them to at least attempt to assassinate some figure is not a new concept. nor is it a wild concept. It is wild, actually, in the sense to think that somebody would actually do this. But the idea that it's like some impossible thing, and or that nobody out there has the motivation to do this, is not a wild concept. And I do believe that Sirhan Sirhan, the assassin of the alleged assassin of RFK, was under mind control. I think that if you consider it and look at all of the evidence, there's very little chance that he was not under mind control. And I think that Thomas Crooks is also a perfect example of somebody that was under hypnosis, aka mind control, and never really needed to be the actual assassin. If his bullet hit Trump and killed him, cool. Frosting on the cake to these people. But that was not his role in this. His role was to be caught with a gun and killed on site, so that case closed, end of investigation, no need to move forward with this. We know everything we need to know. Thank you, Thomas Crooks. If you look at the video that bystanders took of Thomas Crooks, when they're pointing at him for multiple minutes saying, hey, guy on the roof has a gun. And the way he's acting, he is not acting. He like kind of lifts himself up and gets back down and lifts himself up. He's not acting like somebody that's like, oh shit, I need to hurry and get to the ridge of this roof and take my shots. I've been compromised. Or, oh shit, I better get the hell out of here, or they're probably going to shoot me. No. Was he not under mind control and just suicidal and absolutely ready to die that day? I suppose that's possible. I just think it's less likely than the idea of him being under mind control, like Sirhan Sirhan was, like I'm sure other assassins and or operatives around the world have been. The MK Ultra program, mind control program, is not fictitious. It's very well known. It's not a secret anymore. It's out in the open. You could argue it, but you wouldn't be making good, valid arguments. But this is all coming to light now. I have to say, I am more and more a Trump fan every day. You know, do I think that Trump is perfect and that every decision he makes I'm going to agree with? I doubt it. I don't think there's been that person yet that I've completely agreed with, particularly a politician. So we will see. But more to come. I'll be very interested to see those files on all these, particularly if the files on 9/11 are actually released. Like, subscribe, comment below, hit the notification button. Until next time.